With this, we will move on to amazing session with speakers from across the globe. And this would be focusing on education plus skills for future workforce. We have some amazing panel from across the globe, and I will take this opportunity to call each and every one. First, I would like to call upon um, Payal Rajpal, who is the South Asia head, Robotex International. She's the director, Robotex India, founder, Hack the Crisis in India. Just to give a brief, uh, she's a futurist and entrepreneur, decade and a half internationally in management and leadership in area of integrating business, FDI, innovation, skill development, social ventures upon relocation to India from UK in 2010. She set up innovation centers to elevate success rate on employability. Her vision with Robotics is teaching future skill to tribal and the government schools with program active in private sector and in remote villages in India with 10,000 students building an intellectual, innovative and incredible India. Welcome Payal Rajpal. Thanks for joining us. A warm welcome.
Thank you. Namaste.
And I would also like to call upon Mr. Peter Vesterbacka, who is the global entrepreneur, founder, Fin East Bay Area, and Slush, Mighty Eagle at Angry Birds. Welcome, Mr. Peter. Thanks for joining us. Just to give a brief, Peter is a global entrepreneur from the finest Bay Area, all the heart of Eurasia, Helsinki, Finland. Branded communities co-created and initiated by Peter include the HP Bazaar, Mobile Monday, Slush and Startup Sauna, to name a few. Thank you very much for joining us. Next, I would like to call upon Mr. Bill Drew, who's the director of APEC MSc programs, Aston University. Yeah, Mr. Bill is a senior chartered engineer and member of the Institution of Mechanical Engineer with many years of experience in industrial experience. He was one of the first developers of work-based learning program in the UK. Welcome once again, Mr. Bill. Next, I would like to move on. Mr. Santeri Koivisto, who's the Education and Entrepreneurship at SAMK, Managing Partner at TeacherGaming.
Hi there.
Yeah, welcome. Mr. Santeri is a serial entrepreneur in EdTech specialized in games in education at SAMK Education and Entrepreneurship at Satakunta University of Applied Sciences. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to move on Ivan Yakovlevich, who's the head of Yaudat Limited. Ivan is a software developer, IT entrepreneur, and director of Yaudat. Ivan was educated in a specialized mathematical gymnasium in Belgrade, as well as St. Clair Oxford College in the UK and the University of Belgrade, Faculty of Organizational Sciences. Ivan is devoted to creating global IT solutions and services that help people and businesses in our day-to-day activities. Thank you very much for joining us, Ivan. Warm welcome. And to moderate this amazing panel, we have Payal Rajput, who would be moderating this session, focusing on education plus skills for future workforce. Over to you, Payal.
Thank you, Sudhir. Good evening to everyone tuning in from India, and good afternoon to all the stellar panelists with us here today. So quite an interesting panel. And when we think of reimagining education and accelerating optimistic change in learning with comprehensive studies identifying the trending job roles and skills in emerging tech, training the future of work, making acquiring of new skills imperative, and half the workforce requiring reskilling. An excerpt from the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs recent report says that by 2025, 85 million jobs may be displaced by increasing automation, while around 97 million new jobs may emerge that are more adapted to the new division of labor between humans, machines, and algorithms. So let's hear some initial thoughts from our marvelous panel right here. And beginning with Peter, you work extensively in the futuristic domain. So could we have a few opening remarks from you, please?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think that if you look, always, I mean, if you start by looking at the future, so the really good thing about future is that we can actually affect it. So that's kind of like what is fantastic about the future. And I think that, of course, then the best way to kind of like make the kind of future that we want is to kind of like make it so. And then also, if you look at education and the future, I think that one thing that is kind of like certain is that we don't know what kind of skills and competencies we'll need. You know, there's going to be a lot of new jobs, and basically, instead of pretending that we know exactly what we're doing, I think that we need to prepare our young people for, you know, whatever might happen. So give them the skills and kind of like the means to cope with whatever the future might bring. So I think that is super important, and that's also why education is you know, like kind of like the foundation for everything. So I think that you know, that's kind of like, of course, very big picture view, but I think that we really need to invest in the future, hence invest in you know, education, and invest in our young people, and make sure that we provide them with the best possible kind of like education and the tools to cope with whatever the future might bring.
Thank you, Peter. Absolutely resonating with your thoughts of investing in the young talent pool there. Bill, could we have some opening remarks from yourself, please?
Yes, thank you, Payal. Thank you very much. You set the context out very well in your introductory remarks. But this is a journey that has not just required a change recently. It's been a long time coming. I've been on a journey for 25 years now, trying to change the way that we do higher engineering education. Having come from industry, I recognized a long time ago that the graduates we were getting were not equipped for the world of work we were working in 25 years ago. And since then, of course, change has only accelerated. And the university sector, being very traditional, has lagged terribly far behind everybody else. If you compare what a typical university lecture looks like today, it's not that different from a typical university lecture of a couple of 100 years ago. Maybe some of the technology has changed, and maybe some of the clothing has changed, but the basic premise of one individual delivering knowledge to a group of other individuals in a one-way communication is pretty much the same. And that is inappropriate. It was inappropriate 25 years ago. It's certainly going to be inappropriate in a post-COVID world. So for the past 10 years at Aston University, we've been running these programs called professional engineering programs, which attempt to change that. They were set out in collaboration with an organization called the Engineering Council to widen participation to higher education. So it's not just limited to a select few who can afford to go. And that change is a hard journey to effect. There's a lot of reluctance to change in higher education, but it is happening. We have slowly grown these programs from a small start. We've now got a center where we currently have 750 students spread across about 18 different programs. And gradually, bit by bit, people around us are seeing the impact of that change on the employability and the value added of the graduates we are producing. So hopefully this change to the format, the methodology of education is something that we can keep pushing. And I'm really looking forward to this dialogue this evening with you to see not only if I can explain to other people what I've been trying to do, but to listen to what others are doing and learn something from them as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. And absolutely agree with you about the industry and academia gap that we've been facing for the last few decades, where the industry says that, you know, we have these fresh graduates, but then they aren't equipped enough to get on the job, you know, as soon as they're fresh out of college. So yeah, thank you, Bill. Santeri, could we hear some opening remarks from yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you. So let me take this from an individual point of view and take up the make it so that Peter mentioned. I've had the luxury of spending about 10 years with startup entrepreneurs, being myself around the world, and just like be completely mind blown how insightful and knowledgeable and talented these people are. And then when I went to I started at the university at Satakunta University of Applied Sciences, I really, my focus was to work with students that wanted to start building their businesses and really didn't know like where to go. And during the 3 years, well, I've been now working with them for about 2 years. I've been looking and following how they are turning into some of these extremely knowledgeable and already highly talented people. Already they are very young of age, and then I've just like somehow like witnessed the change, like the dramatic change of these people when they are actually making it themselves and when they are active. And I think that in many cases, university degrees have turned into this like a consumer product where you come in and you consume the degree, and then you suppose that the paper will take you somewhere. But I think that we are turning more and more into the brand of the university. Well, of course, we like brands, but the university degree and the grades have lesser value, and what you actually spend the time in 3-4 years in the university has more and more value, how you actually spent that. And if from what I've seen, the 3-4 years can be like just crazy impactful for somebody's future and their skill set. And I just hope that what also Bill mentioned, this entrepreneurship in the university is something that as an individual institution we can take further, but also as a society as a whole.
Thank you, Santeri. And I agree with you. We see so many skilled young talent pool, and especially, you know, these championships. And I'm, you know, sure Peter will agree that, you know, the talent that we see during Slush or Robotex, sometimes, you know, as young as 7.5 is fantastic. And then that sort of raises a debate that we have these, you know, stellar graduates out of universities, and then we have, you know, skilled, really young talent pools. So yeah, agree with you there. Ivan, could we have your opening remarks, please?
Yes, well, as we can see here, we are all connected to one global platform, and this is the best proof that we are actually living in a global world. And of course, students expect to have professional services and to be able to meet their goals and ambitions in this global world, which is becoming online more and more every day. When the whole idea about Yaudat started, it was as in real life, you usually have someone who is guiding you and helps you from a day-to-day basis and help you to do what you want and realize yourself. Well, the first idea about Yaudat was actually to do this in the online world, so that there is a real friend and a guide in the educational world online, so that students can, as colleagues said, have the opportunity to have the good education, not only by going and flying somewhere to some exact university, but to also have the good education online. Of course, Yaudat thinks about university as a good place, and that's why we prepare students also for entering top world universities, but the idea is to help students achieve all this online from their room, which is especially good in these hard times.
Thank you, Ivan. So yeah, I mean, we are all rather aware that over the coming decade, a non-negligible share of newly created jobs will be in wholly new occupations or existing occupations undergoing some significant transformations in terms of their content and skill requirements. So looping in the initial remarks from you know, our panelists here, going to my next question, that what are the skills required for the future workforce, and what's the impact of digital learning on, let's say, skilling and upskilling? So Bill, if we could you know, start this with you.
Yes, thank you again, Payal. Well, we've got to start where we are, and currently I think there is and has been for a long time now a fundamental mismatch between the supply side of our skills and the demand side of our skills. Our educational system, our traditional education skill, if you look at the profile of knowledge development and expertise, it's triangular shape. Everybody goes through the first foundation years of education. Some of those are eliminated as it goes on through some of the sort of early teens type examinations and drop out and go into the workplace. And other examinations, they go on to sort of further schooling, college schooling, exams, further few drop out. Some go on to university, exams, further few drop out to do masters, postgraduate, and a further few drop out. So you have a triangular shape of skills profile on the supply side. However, if we look what's been happening on the demand side for skills, automation, robotics, computerization, all of these things, it's not been so easy to automate or to remove from the workplace some of the manual tasks. Robotics has started to do that. So the base of the demand is still pretty large, but the middle rank has been squeezed. But what we now have is greater demand, as Ivan and Santeri were saying, for entrepreneurship, people with higher level skills. So what we've ended up with is a hourglass shape, Venturi shape, demand side. And so the two do just not match. And this explains one of the reasons why we have graduates who can't get jobs, basically, but not enough skills, because there's a fundamental mismatch. So, and this is what's got to be addressed within our educational system. Now, those skills, as Peter was saying, I can't predict what they will be. I don't think very few people can predict what they will be. But one thing we can predict is 3 or 4 general areas that we're going to need to address in order to let people accelerate through that. So we get an acceleration through that Venturi part of the hourglass, so that we don't have a large body of people sat there. We need digital competence. It doesn't matter what the discipline is, we're going to need digital competence. We're going to need self-direction in learning, because people are going to have to engage with their own learning profile. It's going to be no longer sufficient for somebody else in a university or an institute to say, this is what you need to learn for your career. Everybody's different. People are going to have to work out themselves what they need for their career, and they're going to have to be self-directed learning. And the final thing I would say, the final generic skill, is thinking skills. In a knowledge economy, we need to create people who think, not just learn and memorize, but people who think. And this is really important, I think, certainly for entrepreneurship. And this is where the automation can enable. If we've got people who can think, people who are digitally competent, people who can understand what it is they want to learn, they will be able to use the internet and communication technologies in this phenomenon that we're starting to call Education 4.0. to comply with Education Industry 4.0. So I think it's hard to say, but certainly there's got to be fundamental change, but we've got to realize what we've got to change from to what we've got to change to.
Yeah, no, thank you, Bill. Absolutely agree with you on that. Especially when, you know, we've been seeing the entire COVID and what's the post-COVID economy going to be. And everyone's looking at a very resilient model where, you know, it's great if you know algorithms and Python, but it's really important for you to know cognitive thinking and you know, strategy as well. So Thank you. Peter, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I would start by saying that I couldn't agree more. So I really, I think that, yeah, I'm kind of like a big fan of this kind of like triple E approach to kind of like this. So looking at, you know, like education, entrepreneurship, and entertainment, and kind of like looking at kind of like those 3 E's. And I mean, education, of course, you know, that's really kind of like the foundation. But I mean, like, who cares if you have fantastic education if you don't know what to do with it? And for me, you know, the entrepreneurship is really the doing, and entrepreneurs are people who do things. And I think we need to make sure that we foster that like entrepreneurial like mindset. And I think that if you look at kind of the world, so if you have that entrepreneurial like thinking and mindset in you, then, you know, it doesn't really matter what kind of like comes up. You'll figure out a way to solve it. And I mean, this is what we talk about like in education, that we need to be, you know, creative problem solvers. And I think what Bill was saying there, I mean, it's the kind of like the thing here is that many educational systems, and I think that this is particularly true if I look across Asia, are really kind of like more geared at, you know, okay, let's memorize everything, and then you kind of like yeah, you memorize a bunch of stuff, but you don't know how to apply it. And if you don't know how to kind of like use what you kind of like know, or in theory know, who cares? I mean, and I think that that was kind of like fine if you had kind of like this pipe where, you know, you get education and then you go and work in an office or in a factory, and okay, it's like fine. But the world we live in now, and again, here is where technology has had its biggest impact and will have its biggest impact, is that there are a lot of these jobs that, I mean, computers just do so much better than us humans. So then we shouldn't train humans to compete with machines. I mean, we should focus on what humans do better. And then why I have this kind of like 30. So I mean, we have the education, entrepreneurship, entertainment. Then you're like, okay, so what is this entertainment all about? Okay, I think that there's a couple of things there that we can learn from the entertainment industry. And maybe one thing that all of us kind of like in education, you know, we need to always keep in mind that we are always competing for the attention. We're competing for people's time. And if we offer poor, you know, and even bad learning experiences, bad educational experiences, we lose. I mean, it's so much easier for the kids today, you know, to, okay, I couldn't care less about this. This is super boring. I'll just, you know, go play a game, or, you know, check out what's like on Netflix. So I think that we can't, kind of like many times, you know, I work in games, and many times I'm told that, oh, Peter, you have to understand it's a learning game, meaning that, Peter, understand it's not a very good game, and that's why the kids don't want to play it, but it's a learning game. You can't use learning as an excuse for poor execution. I mean, you have to, if you make learning games, they have to be as good or better than like real games, or whatever you want to use as like the term. So I think that this is something that we can learn from the entertainment industry, that every second we are competing for the attention, and we need to kind of like just accept that, and then deliver the kind of learning experiences that will actually make the young people, actually all of us, addicted to learning. That's another thing we can learn from like the gaming industry in particular. So maybe the most important thing for our educational systems, and I think one thing that makes, you know, like the educational system and experience here in Finland pretty good, is that at least our educational system, our schools, don't kill the initiative, don't kill the creativity. I mean, everything else I think is kind of like irrelevant. Yeah, you learn a few things and you might memorize some stuff, but let's make sure that we foster this entrepreneurial mindset, and that we don't kill people's ability to take initiative and kind of like make stuff happen. I think that in the end, it's complicated, but actually in the end, it's also like as simple as that let's not like destroy people's abilities.
No, thank you, Peter. Well said. And, you know, coming from you, who's the mighty eagle from Angry Birds, and sort of revolutionized the fact that, you know, gamification could be, you know, and can be, and is rather a career. And I remember during my, visits to Finland, when I would see the actual project being made during educational classes, and a lot of, usage of immersive tech, you could see the sudden spike in the students' interest, whether, as opposed to reading a textbook and taking some homework back. So, yeah, thank you. So, yeah, Santeri, could we have your thoughts on this?
Yeah, continuing with Peter said, it's weird to me, who is, I would say I'm sort of a learning geek. If I have the time, I like to sit next to the piano and try to learn it. And for some reason, I started enjoying learning somewhere around the university, where I finally was able to study and practice something that I actually cared about. It always sort of puzzles me, how have we come from, as a human being, so far from such a core mechanic of us being the learning, which actually makes us what we are, and why it's nowadays considered by many boring. Well, I mean, Peter already mentioned quite a few things how we could tackle this, but to mention, to go back to the skills skill setting and what skills and knowledge we might need. Of course, we all probably agree about these soft skills and 21st century skills. We have many names for these, how to actually call them. But I think that one thing that comes to down to the entrepreneurship as well is sort of building that curiosity and building that excitement to go into new details, new context situations. Maybe it's more, genetics push some people into those more than others. But I think that everybody should have, when they graduate from basic education or high school and even university, have that sort of curiosity still and creativity with them. Now, we have recently, with our AI program, we did a very dramatic change to our curriculum, and where we tried with our best of our ability to integrate this flipped learning concept. Well, this also has many names, but the basic idea is that people go into the theory and get acquainted with the topic before they come to class, and then with the mentor's help, with the experts' help, they do tasks, they present, they do activities that would deepen their understanding in that. And of course, then they go back home working on those projects. And I think this has become pretty mentally quite a demanding change for quite a few of our students. But I do think that we are sort of at the last moment. So if we are not doing this as a university, now this is sort of the last chance really for our industry to then have the skillful workforce if we are not doing it. And I think that we need to start it on the first day. And the first impression of our university needs to be this rock solid, where you now need to take the initiative yourself. You need to be entrepreneurial in your mindset in order to get through here. And of course, we help you to perform and go through these challenges that you might have at the beginning. But I think that this change is part of the puzzle to solve the skills problem, but also keep the students entrepreneurial and curious when they actually graduate from us, hopefully even with their own company. Who knows?
That's a brilliant sort of vision to have, and it's fantastic when we speak to a lot of professors, HODs, VCs, deans, and these days they're all talking about, we would want our students to become future entrepreneurs and set up their own companies. So that's a fantastic thought process to have, and agreeing that when we talk about artificial intelligence, ML, we see a lot of life skills that are a part of it, team building, communication skills. So yeah, Santeri, thank you for your insight. Ivan, you're a young IT entrepreneur, and what would your thoughts be on the future skills side?
Well, I agree that in the future, a lot of work will be done by robots. So as Peter said, we should definitely focus on what we humans do the best. And technically, that is what we have been doing since the early times. And that is critical thinking. We often say that this is the mother of all sciences. And that's really true. So technically, this is very important because although the world is changing more rapidly than ever, and technology seems to be the main driving force, I believe that it is important to emphasize the learning, the learning of critical thinking skills and philosophical questioning in education. Technology is here, but it changes, it comes and goes, and the critical thinking is something basic that is actually very important. And then again, if we speak about the world becoming one global place, we must say that there is also a great importance of the language skills as well, because we must communicate to each other, and also because we are more and more communicating by text and not just by speaking. We also have the need to express ourselves in writing better and better than ever before. So technically, as once more, I cannot more agree with the things that Peter said about that we should definitely focus on the things that we do the best, and those are technically very well, in some terms, very basic things, but technically as it is usual, basic things are sometimes the most important ones.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ivan. Moving on to our next phase, where we're talking about crafting a talent strategy that develops 4 kinds of skills: digital, higher cognitive, social and emotional, adaptability, and resilience. So along with technical and future skills, where a whole lot of new age courses that cover this sort of hybrid model of life skills and technical skills. But then when we talk about the future workforce, it's quite important to have this developed to, as quite an important muscle to strengthen the companies for future disruptions. So let's sort of start with Santeri here and hear from you about what do you think this talent strategy should be for the future workforce?
Well, let me look this from the university point of view, since that's probably the most familiar field to me. So, well, starting off with, it's going to be a massive challenge for the universities in Finland, but also in other places as well, where I think that it is understandable that many of the professors and experts that work in the universities who are just so deeply knowledgeable about certain domains that of course they would like to bring that deep information and understanding to the table, and that typically leads to a situation where quite often we end up covering those in lectures, or we go into a very heart of the substance and not necessarily work on the skills as well. I mean, of course, there is the skill to learn something and build strategies in order to make it more convenient for you to take a grip of that information. But I think that sort of the process that we have been just starting, I would say a couple of years back, is that, okay, how is the substance and what is the substance layer, sort of the facts and know-how? Let's say if we are training engineers, okay, what do they need to know about electricity so they don't kill themselves? What do they need to know about the next 5 years of whatever technologies are developing? And the factual information or the laws, regulations that just are mandatory. That you need to know those. And where can we build like connections to another layer, which would be the skills layer, where all of these different topics, when we are teaching this class X, what skill are we developing while the fact X is going to be covered. So the skill Y is there with it. So all the curriculums, like all the activities that our students would be doing, there are these, pools of information that they need in order to perform well when they go to the work first day, or maybe they start a company and they need to figure out the accounting. So how can we provide those, but at the same time provide them with the skill set? Is the information something that the student could self-learn? That first we start something, a project, and then they come across that you need this information. But of course, that type of structuring requires a bit of developing and testing. And I think that we are now at the level where we are looking at these two layers, where the skills being as equally important as the skills, as the facts and the knowledge, and then connecting these two, that every lesson, every course would make sense. So our students would be building both the know-how, the knowledge, but the skill set at the same time.
Thank you, Santeri. And Peter, I'm sure that you've seen, thousands of these ideas where a skill-based idea is stemmed into a new startup, and they've gone on to become entrepreneurs. And you've been supporting them a lot. I remember the last time when we met, you had a fantastic facility to house, new startups. So I would like to hear from you about what should be a talent strategy for the future workforce.
Yeah, so I think starting point, of course, should be that not only should we be able to offer fantastic education, but we should be able to offer, like fantastic jobs. And with that, I think that's kind of like already like maximizing the potential for happiness and a happy life. And I think that this is kind of like what it kind of like boils down to. And I think that also then we need to blur kind of like the borders between kind of like, okay, education and like entrepreneurship and actually studying and working. I think that again, with the world changing faster kind of like by the day, I think that we also need to kind of like move away from this, that okay, you get your degree and you're like done. I mean, that's not a very sustainable approach in a world that is kind of like changing very fast, and like what you learned yesterday might be kind of like totally old and legacy tomorrow. So I think that that is one reason why we should really encourage entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship. I mean, that is it's more like the entrepreneurial mindset. It's not like the exclusive domain of startups. We need entrepreneurially minded people in big corporations, in government, in the universities, like everywhere. And I think that this is something that it's so important. And what I said before, that I mean, who cares if you know everything if you don't know what to do with it? So I think that is super important. And of course, the best way to learn is by doing. So it's fantastic if while you're studying, you can actually apply what you're learning. Maybe it's in your own company, you start a company, that's perfect. And I think that, of course, I would recommend, like doing a startup and being an entrepreneur, but also like if you can then work, and you do internships and, and if you can blur kind of like the borders between kind of like study and work. I think that we should have more of these kind of like study work programs, and universities should encourage that. And I think that this is something that is can't really kind of like be emphasized enough. I think it's super important. And I mean, I happen to know a little bit like what Santeri and the guys are doing at the Satakunta University Applied Sciences, and I think that is again applied AI. I mean, it's very important that then the students there that okay, you learn about AI, but then it's like, okay, what can I do with it? Okay, you can apply it on this company, in your own company, own project and all of that, and then you can like learn. I think learning by doing, we all know that is like in most cases you learn a lot more by actually doing it. And probably most people would, like agree that if you want to drive a car, yes, you can read a book and you can study the theory, but in many cases, driving the car is like a bit more effective way of figuring it out. And the same, now if we're studying AI, we can learn all about the theory, but okay, wouldn't it be kind of like pretty cool if you can apply it on a real world problem? How do you apply it on this, robotics like warehouse or automated warehouse next door or something like that. So I think that we need to also be a bit creative in how we deliver kind of like the education. And this also goes back to the kind of like thing that let's also keep in mind that we have a massive entertainment industry, and there are so many things competing for the attention. So we need to also, get everybody as excited about learning as Santeri, learning to play the piano and all of that. And I think that it's this enthusiasm that we need to really encourage and help people figure out like what they actually love to do.
Yeah, great. I mean, I agree with you. And the car example couldn't be, more than spot on. I mean, reading it from a book or driving it yourself. And more importantly, the reason that they say on-job training and stress on internships is, is real. And I think if we can, at some point achieve this amazing, equilibrium between industry and academia collaboration, it's going to be fantastic to be then able to do what you're learning. So, yes, Santeri.
Sorry, I just want to say that look how they are training the AI. So it's playing chess against itself, and it's learning by doing. And that's how it's beating us in many fields nowadays.
Yeah, or immersive technologies, taking the VR goggle and wandering around outside. So yeah, I agree with you on that. Thank you. So yeah, Bill, you work so sort of progressively and actively in the professional engineering, sector. And what according to you should be the talent strategy?
Well, it's been really fascinating listening to Peter there, sort of raising the subject of learning by doing, because that's exactly what I've been trying to do for the past 20 years. Sometimes felt like a lone voice, but slowly getting more and more of a chorus behind me. However, whilst I agree that one might say learning, and I've written it down, Peter, you said best way of learning is by doing. If you mean the best way of learning means creating deep learning, I totally agree with you. It's learning that stays fixed because you've had the experience. But it's not necessarily very efficient way of learning. If we want to accelerate that learning, as I was talking about, accelerating the learning to the higher levels of entrepreneurship, we need to find ways to do that both effectively and efficiently so we can bring people up to their career potential as soon as possible. So we mustn't lose sight of, as somebody who's really been doing this for a long time, of the other modes of learning. Learning by doing is key, and for so many years it was ignored and separated off from the academy. We've brought it back in, but the other two modes of learning, in a triple mode learning, would be learning by imitation and learning by thinking. And doing, they all link together. So learning by imitation is really important, if you like, for the basic underpinning theory of any discipline. Just by going and learning how to build a house, by doing it, might enable you to build a house, but that house might not be able to withstand an earthquake, yeah? Unless you've learned from somebody else how to do that, yeah? Now, so you need to integrate that learning by doing within a multimodal concurrent learning approach. So all three elements learn together. And some people would say, and I tend to, at the higher ends of learning, certainly to get people up to the entrepreneurship, it's the learning by thinking aspect that you need to put on as the capstone to the doing and the imitation. So any learning strategy, any talent development strategy needs to incorporate all these modes of learning. And we need to be very careful about the type of thinking we do. It was Ivan, I think, was talking about critical thinking. And yes, there are different types of thinking. If we just do something and we just think about how to do that better, learning by doing, which is normally just getting better, that's sort of incremental thinking. What did I do wrong this time? I won't make that mistake. But if we develop it into the true critical thinking, learning by thinking, sort of almost doing virtual experiments, is basically saying, well, what did I assume when I did that? What could go wrong? How could it be developed better? What was wrong with the theory? What didn't apply? And instead of ignoring outliers, embrace outliers and start looking at them. Any of you who've come across Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow will recognize some of these ideas in here. We have to put in a talent strategy, a multimodal form of learning, and that multimodal form of learning has to be flexible to suit different industries, different sectors, different individuals. But please, while I agree totally with you, Peter, that learning by doing has been ignored, it's only best if we incorporate it into a wider strategy of multimodal learning. Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. You're very intense, and completely resonate with your thought on flexibility in learning. So thank you for your thoughts. Ivan, could we hear from you as well? I'm sorry, it does happen when the final panelist then says that, oh, everything I wanted to say is, covered by everyone. So apologies. I'm gonna put the next question to you first. So yeah.
Don't worry. Anyway, of course, I agree with everything I heard, and I want to add maybe a little bit. Definitely, I would say that the most important ability now is the ability to change, and to change very fast. In regarding to this, it is connected with thinking, because of course you must think in order to change, but also we can say that one ability that I would maybe add is the ability and skill to think ahead, because as we are going faster and faster, technically I can compare it. I can compare like driving a car and driving an airplane. Airplane is much faster than a car, and you must think a lot ahead in order to be able to drive an airplane, because if you go left a little bit in a car, it will go left immediately. If you want to go left when you are flying in an airplane, you must do this much earlier, and you must think in advance. So technically, as we are being more fast as a society, this is something which is of course very important, because especially if we look at programming and such a kind of jobs, by the time you finish your university, everything is changing very fast, and you must continue to learn in the future. That is actually something that is important to learn, not only in the universities, not only when you are young. At these times, it is important to learn all the time. For example, at Yaudat, that is why we introduced corporate learning, so that people who already work in companies can improve their skills and be able to change in this fast world.
Thank you, Ivan. So yes, going with you first on this one. So we were talking about the jobs of future and the skills that are required for it. So it's still sort of rather imperative. Pressing point today remains reimagining education. And when we talk about the future jobs, ranging from AI, machine learning specialists to application developers, digital transformation specialists, IoT specialists, the list could sort of go on. So when we think of these future jobs and we look at, these were the skills that were a part of co-curricular at some point, and now put into slowly moving into curricular, because Santeri here is actively talking about the bachelor's in applied AI at the moment. A splendid example of a co-curricular moving into curricular. How do you think an industry academia on so two questions here. One is how quickly should we move from this co-curricular into curricular? What all could be the subjects that should sort of rather move in, thinking of the future jobs? And second is we all know that the impactful turnaround ties that we are looking at is a hybrid model of co-creating content with the industry. So What would be your thoughts on these 2 points?
Can you just repeat the first question one more time, please?
Oh, so we're talking about the future of jobs, and these skills used to be co-curricular skills back in the days, and now they are, a part of the curriculum. So which are the other skills you think should accelerate into this category? Number one, and number two, your thoughts on how impactful would the industry integration from creating co-curricular content would be?
Yes, thank you. Well, definitely, it's the skills that are connected to thinking and not to something that can be done in a manual way, I would say. But then again, I sometimes like to say that the best skill that we can have is common sense and focus, because in some point of view, when if we look throughout the history, we learned to do complex things. For example, to shape objects and metals and wood and I don't know, some very complex things. And now all these complex manual operations are not that important anymore. So technically we are returning to what led us to this. I hope that it is something that I was able to tell in a good way, so that everyone can understand. But technically we need to, beside high technological skills and programming and so on, we must also improve basic skills. And also, because of the globalization, of course, it's language that connects us all, so that we can communicate better and work better. Because sometimes we are we can think about something very complex, but then in the very beginning, if we can't understand each other, for example, then we would not be able to accomplish great things. So I would maybe say that it's three kind of skills. The skills which are like critical thinking, the basic skills like common sense, focus, and such kind, and of course the skills that enable us to connect better and express in a best way.
Thank you. It sort of, means an awful lot coming from a young IT entrepreneur that common sense still is on top of the charts.
I totally think that it is because sometimes we must put common sense to work, not to simply fly somewhere where we should not.
Agreed with you. So Bill, it was very interesting to sort of read in your bio that the newly developed version of the Masters in Professional Engineering, which is now grown to become one of the most successful and also one of the most largest gateway project programs with students both in the UK and internationally. And I'm certain that there's a heavy element of, industry academia, not only integration, but like constant, curriculum sort of improvisation. So would like to hear your thoughts on this.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Yes, it's required quite a radical change in thinking. We have had to do away with the concept of teaching. It's all about learning, and who defines what learning should be. We've had to move away from saying the expertise lies in the university to define the curriculum, to saying there's definitely got to be a co-curriculum, but that shouldn't be a co-curriculum that's defined at the start and then say static. I've tried to use the analogy of manufacturing. Some of you might well be familiar with the concepts of push manufacturing and pull manufacturing. The sort of change from where a car manufacturer would use market research to work out what they thought was the best vehicle and then produce hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them in a day, put them onto the marketplace and hope they were sold, to moving towards a pull manufacturing, where the manufacturer designs the body in white and starts it off on the production line, but then as the car is going down the production line, the end user, the employer or the engineer actually undertaking the learning, then modifies the design to suit their particular needs. So it's a pull type manufacturing, which shifts the power relationship away from the academy towards the employer. But this is how we can do the co-design. And it's very flexible. It is very challenging for the academy. And up until now, up until really the recent rise in using MIT to communicate, it has been difficult to do. But now we can do it. We have done it internationally. We've demonstrated that change to a pull type system allows us to contextualize a program designed in one culture to be adapted to a culture anywhere in the globe, an environment, a sector, a needs-based, and that's how I think we need to go about designing co-curricular in the future, by having a pull model instead of a push model, so that we can get to this idealized concept of mass customization. We can be efficient and effective at the same time. Because if we're going to educate to the highest standards, 40, 50, 60% of our young people to these higher standards, we've got to be efficient as well as effective. Otherwise, it's going to cost us far too much to do in terms of time. Yeah? We need to accelerate it. Exactly what my colleagues have been saying. We need to accelerate this. So we need to be efficient as well as effective.
Great, thank you for that. Fantastic thought process there. So Peter, we all know you as the Mighty Eagle, but then I also worked so closely with you on the education side of things and trying to get the Finnish model of education for teacher training and then students into India, South Asia. We know that you have co-founded several educational startups, and then you're also at the helm of the entire entrepreneurial industry. So what are your thoughts on this integration and adding on to the skills in an accelerated manner?
Yeah, so I have to kind of again repeat myself that I really agree with what was said there, but I think maybe kind of like a Finnish perspective on education and all of this, and I think that I touched on that okay, education, entrepreneurship, all this, but it's also we need to think about happiness. I think that is actually one thing that is super important, and I think that it's not like a coincidence that the Nordic countries, if you look at kind of like the rankings of happiest nations on the planet, we'll find in all of the Nordic countries in top 5 or at least in like the top 10. And one thing, if I look at, it starts with kind of like already like the basic education, that we have very short school days, not a lot of homework, and we have fantastic results. And again, to put that kind of like in contrast with what I see across Asia and actually across the world, but you have like long school days, a lot of homework, and also, like fantastic results on paper, PISA and whatever, like studies. But I think that there is something there, and this is actually also then continues kind of like in working life and in like the higher education and all of that, that you have your studies, you have your work, but you also have like this thing called life, so I'm not a big believer in that, you have to spend, 24/7 studying or working. I don't think that is very effective or very productive. And I think that this is something that, it's very important that we get this right. And I think that if you look at all of education, all that we already there, we need to think about the efficiency and, like the productivity of education. That, if you just measure it that, you have to spend, 12 or 16 hours, studying every day, and otherwise you're not gonna like manage. And the same thing if you have to work 16 hours a day, it's not, I would argue that then the last 8 hours or maybe even before that will not be like super effective. So instead, we should focus on getting stuff done and not measure all of these things in like time. and I think that is very, very important. And everything was kind of like said, was what was said before. I also agree, you know, like with you know, you can't learn by doing, and you can't make that very like efficient. I mean, we need to also, of course, we need to kind of like focus on the disruptions, and we need to kind of like create an environment where people are not afraid of trying new things. And okay, more often than not, when you try new things, you will fail. But I mean, that's normal, it's human, and like all of that. And I agree with what Ivan was saying, that, you know, like probably it's not a good idea to kind of like just try if you know how to fly an airplane. And actually, you know, talking about AI and machines and like computers and all that, I actually think that most people in tech and all of that would agree that if you take like the really big airplanes, you know, the passenger planes, actually it's much better to let machines fly those things than humans. But I mean, that's like another like you know, interesting discussion. So you can always look at this like from many different angles. But yeah, I would you know, kind of like forget about kind of like everything else and really think about like, what do we actually want to achieve? And I would go back then that, okay, let's ask the parents what they want for their kids. Okay, you know, happy life sounds like a pretty good like objective. So then, you know, like, okay, but then why do you insist on like putting your kids into this kind of like torture that, you know, like when I see many of these educational systems, that they haven't really been designed to be enjoyed. And it's like this kind of like, okay, no pain, no gain. Yeah, you can like look at it that way. But I think that, you know, maybe that's a bit of an old-fashioned approach, you know, that it has to hurt, you know, to get educated. So I think that, you know, it's perfectly okay to kind of like work hard and enjoy life. And I think that's like why I always bring up this kind of like Nordic approach to kind of like doing things. And we're, you know, like not suffering too much, you know, here in the Nordic countries, and you know, like it's an okay way of life, and we're not always working. So I think that that's something to keep in mind. And then, you know, I use this example of asking the parents. I actually think that we should, of course, always ask, you know, and the young person, the kids. I mean, I always say that, you know, in Finland, children are people too. And I think that there's like a lot in that, you know, let's treat, you know, young people as well, and they probably know what they want to do and what they love to do. So that's kind of like, yeah, you know, bit of getting a bit philosophical there, but I think it's important that we keep in mind what actually we're trying to do.
I know, and you know, sort of advocating there for the happiness factor. I still remember a few years ago when I first landed at the Helsinki airport, and I could hear like these birds chirping in the background, and I thought maybe this is me and my jet lag speaking. But then that sort of continued throughout, and it did put a smile on everyone's face, you know. So entering the capital of happiness, you know, in Helsinki, just straight at the airport, and even in the washroom, they had the bird chirping voice. So that was sort of quite fantastic. Santeri, again, apologies to, you know, have you as the last one to speak, but as a serial entrepreneur in EdTech, specialization in gaming at your educational point, and now with progressive AI, I'm rather certain that you'd be the cheerleader advocate of, you know, industry integration. So what are your thoughts on accelerating those?
Well, it's of course a massive undertaking, like Bill mentioned, and being able to create these pool manufactured degrees and students for whether that's the entrepreneurial project or the company next door who needs that talent. I think that there is a big transformation in what professors' work is going to look like in the future. Like, how much is that about the networks, to be building those networks into companies and that's ecosystem and helping with that? How much the curriculum can that be flexible? You know, and also the ministry funding, like how are they paying us for this, and what's the measurement, all that. When I was in the university back in the days, my university, I did a degree in classroom teaching. I was very fortunate that my professors were really flexible with me building my company and testing these video games in the class, and it actually turned out into a company that we finally was acquired by Microsoft. But now Now, how we have been approaching this at the university is that we have this academy model that has been now in a pilot for a couple of years, 2-3 years. And we happen to be in a fortunate location where we have about 200 AI and robotics companies around the campus and around the hub. And of course, that is constantly pushing us to, we need talent. We need talent. Where can we get students? So we are lucky that way. Of course, there is that pull momentum already coming to us. And now, based on that, we created this academy model where, of course, part of the studies is that we, of course, these work-life skills, these basic skills, basic information, how to structure your time, build that maturity as a professional in this field. Of course, acquire the life skills to support your own life when you are moving out of home. Of course, that's one part. But then now, finally, there's the big piece of the curriculum where the companies are sending projects around automation, AI, machine vision, whatever that might be. And then at certain point, the students are, when they are more senior, step by step more senior, they take more and more challenging projects and they get exposed to the company culture, working in the company. Then they come back to the university, get the credits, they show what they have learned. Of course, they discuss with the experts in the company, okay, what they did achieve and what they went through, so we can award them the credits and all that. But finally, it turns out into this 50-50, 50% working in companies, working on real life projects, networking, building work-life skills, building the next position you are going to jump from the university into. And of course, part of that is taking the basics of that particular field in the university. But I think that model has been working really well, and now we are just testing the capacity and how big we can actually make it happen. So stay tuned for that.
Thank you, Santeri. And fantastic to learn that we have bachelors in AI and a lot of these future skills which are not coming up, and the examples that you gave about the not just employability but also entrepreneurship stemming from and after these courses, I'm certain would be quite helpful to the listeners today. So before I sort of jump into the questions, I'm going to summarize the questions that we have received from the viewers to 2 questions. But before that, I would like to hear some parting thoughts on lifelong learning and just your message, advice, guidance to the students who are listening in, and the parents, of course, and also to the schools, institutions, and corporates that have tuned in. So, Peter, would like you to go first for your parting comments.
Yeah, I think that I always have the same advice kind of like for the students and the young people, and actually applies to kind of like all of us, that I mean, you should really do what you love to do. I think that is kind of like the best advice I can give. And I mean, if you're working on or in a job where you don't enjoy or don't love what you're doing, you're probably doing the wrong thing. So don't do that. Do something that you actually enjoy and ideally love to do. And it's not always easy to do that, but that's what you need to do. And I can't give any kind of better advice than that to kind of the students and the young people listening to this.
Thank you. And I think, coming from you and, with the conviction and determination that, you have shown, not just with Angry Birds, but, throughout all the vertical sectors that you've contributed to is quite commendable. So thank you for that, Peter. And Bill, what would your final thoughts be?
Very quickly, in future, lifelong learning is not going to be an option. It will be essential.
Awesome. Short and sweet. Nailed it there. Thank you. Ivan, what do you think? Your final comments, please.
Yes, well, apply common sense, do what you love, as Peter said, and focus.
Awesome. Thank you. Santeri, your takeaway, please.
Well, I think this starts from early days of school, kindergarten, all the way to university and all the way to adulthood. nowadays it's so easy to be a consumer of media, consumer of whatever goods and services we get. As much as we can be on the creator side, the better. And I would love that our curriculums from the very early ages to the very last, or the lifelong learning would be focusing on the being the creator, part, and less about being a consumer of education, consumer of whatever it might be in your life. So I hopefully that at least for, let's say, for parents who are looking at their child's free time, how they are spending their free time and all that, if there are creative and creator elements there, then that would be wonderful. And I think that will is one of the best insurance for a happy future for kids, and why not adults as well.
Thank you, Santeri. We have two questions, and I'm going to sort of then split it because we have, the expertise here. So, so to Bill and Ivan, and obviously Peter, you'd like to jump in, please feel free to do that. We have summarized this question into one that says how COVID-19 has affected study overseas. I mean, obviously it has, but what's your perspective on it, Bill?
For traditional courses, it has impacted it as much as we have done, and we have gone out of our way to minimize the impact. There has been an impact. The scary thing is that this will not be the last unforeseen event that will cause disruption in traditional programs. However, the work-based learning programs that we've been running at APEC have hardly been affected at all, because of their inherent flexibility. The only impact has been where people who have been in work have had to stop their work because of some furlough and shutting the firm down for temporarily. But the learning experience has not been impacted at all out with that, and in fact has been enhanced because people are far more familiar now with using the things like Zoom and WebEx and Teams chats, which is enabling us to work at a distance. So in a sense, COVID, one of the silver linings, if we can find any, has been this is accelerating what I think is a really important change to a sort of distributed learning environment.
Yeah, and I was speaking to a few, universities earlier on from the UK, France, Australia, Canada, Finland as well. And not only have they seen an influx in, their students because of this entire hybrid or digital model, but they've, the universities that have opened have also sort of allowed the students to have a student visa and then, visit the universities once they've gotten their, admission. So that's great. Thank you. And yeah, Ivan, since you work extensively in the, field of preparing students for, the competitive exams, entrance exam, what is your, take on this?
Well, I would say that everything that would happen anyway with COVID, it just happened much faster. If we look at the education, it is normal that as many other, let's say, processes is becoming more and more online. And anyway, the education was also more and more online, but with COVID, it simply happened faster. At Yaudat, we see this because technically we had a big jump with the start of COVID because, of course, home learning and learning from home and online learning became much more interesting because of the whole situation. But technically it would happen anyway, I would say, but it simply happened much faster. And I would say that is the main difference with COVID and without COVID. Simply many things, not only in online education, not only in education, but generally in the world happened faster, but they would happen anyway with many other things. Maybe, I don't know, maybe for example people working more and more from home and less from office. That is also something that was a trend anyway, but simply happened much faster because of COVID.
Yeah, thank you. I think, you know, a resilience thrown in there when you say all for the best. So Peter and Santeri, the next question I'm going to direct to you is, what would be the future of gaming industry and animation in India, and also global collaborations that would come with it?
Do you want to start, Peter? Or, well, from my side, of course, the gaming market itself is like very highly saturated. Like there are so many players out there currently, so many new companies. But at the same time, I think gaming industry hasn't gone through the disruptions that were necessarily expected. For example, people expected that now everybody would be playing only mobile games by now. That didn't happen. I mean, PC gaming is still really well live and kicking, growing as well. And the same, I would say that VR, AR, of course, all of those games, that those technologies came and people expected that now that would be the change. But you know, what happened was that it became one of the platforms that people enjoy games, and now there are just multitude of new opportunities and ways to people to, you know, enjoy play games, not educational content, but also the pure entertainment content and everything in between. I think that although the gaming market is extremely saturated, but at the same time, there are constantly more and more people coming to the gaming market. It's constantly growing, and I think that there are more and more opportunities as well when you find your niche, find your, you know, target audience, whether that's like maybe a single big city AR content or something like that, or for maybe there is one really cool game. Just mention one called Wild True Learn, and now that there was this massive hike in interest to machine learning, all of a sudden there was this Ukrainian-made game where you could actually start teaching the machine and start learning through the history of machine learning. Those type of niche games, you know, all of a sudden became highly popular. So I think that it is constantly more challenging, but at the same time constantly more rewarding space to be involved. And I highly encourage many, you know, young and why not old Indians to join this fund. And I think it's one of the lowest threshold businesses or fields where you can, with very little investment, you can already try your luck and try if you find your audience.
Thank you. Peter?
Yeah, I think that Santeri said it very, very well, and there's lots of opportunity out there. And again, of course, if I look at development in India, I mean, there's a massive amount of talent, very talented people out there, games, animation, all of that. So I expect to see many like successful games and you know, animations and all of that come out of India as well. And there's already a lot, you know, of that happening. So yeah, the future for that in India looks very, very bright. And maybe one more thing about like games, that if you look at that industry, I mean, there's highly specialized skills needed. And if you look at people working in games and the whole games industry, that's typically where kind of like the new technologies and kind of like all the latest and greatest kind of like new things are applied first. So it's a great place to be. You know, what you learn in the games industry can be applied a few years later in other industries. So games is a great place to be if you want to kind of like see what's going to come into the rest of the world, you know, like in a few years.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter, Bill, Santeri, Ivan, for this marvelous, clear-sighted, ingenious thoughts on skills for future workforce. I received a message saying I have to wrap up this session ASAP, so I'm not going to give any parting comments, but thank you. This has been an absolutely marvelous panel once again. Thank you for your time, and we shall be in touch. Over to you, Sudhir.
Thank you very much, Payal. As you rightly said, it's been amazing listening to our esteemed panels who are experts in various sectors discussing about education and skills for future workforce. Thank you very much for joining us at the APAC Global Education and Skill Conclave. Just to brief you, more than 10 countries have joined us as country partners, and 20 state governments in India have joined as state governments, and more than 150 education thought leaders from across the country and beyond have joined us. And today we are standing at the last session of the day 3 of the 3-day conclave. And this has been a wonderful session to end with, talking about games, future, workforce, and education. Thank you so much, Payal Rajpal, for wonderfully moderating us. Payal Rajpal is the South Asia head, Robotex International, director, Robotex India, founder, Hack the Crisis in India. Thank you so much for wonderfully moderating this session. And the gaming expert, the Peter Vesterbacka, global entrepreneur, founder, Finnish Bay Area, and Slush, Mighty Eagle at Angry Birds. Thank you, Peter. Santeri, Koivisto, education and entrepreneurship at SAMK, managing partner at TeacherGaming. Thank you so much, Santeri, for joining us. And Mr. Bill Glew, director of APEC MSc programs, Aston University. Thank you very much, Mr. Bill, for joining us. And Ivan Yakovlevich, head of Yaudat Limited. Thank you very much, Ivan. A warm welcome, and look forward to connect you in future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye. Ciao.
Thank you. Bye-bye.